He looked straight into my eyes and said I wasn't his daughter. The laughter around the dinner table froze. The clinking of glasses, the chatter, it all stopped. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My father, the man I'd spent my whole life trying to make proud, had just denied me, in front of everyone. My stepmother's lips curled into that quiet, satisfied smile she always hid behind politeness. My brother avoided my eyes, pretending to fix his cufflinks. I wanted to scream, to ask why, but my voice wouldn't move. Instead, I sat there, numb, feeling the walls close in while whispers began to spread around me like smoke. He said it so calmly. "You were never mine, Clara." That sentence didn't just break me, it erased me. All those years of loyalty, the sacrifices, the desperate need for his approval, gone in one cruel moment. I remember my glass slipping from my hand, crashing to the floor. Everyone stared, but no one spoke. Not even my mother's portrait on the wall seemed to recognize me anymore. And as I walked out of that house that night, I made a silent promise. If he wanted to destroy my name, I'd make sure his secret wouldn't survive the year. People say we were the perfect family. A big house on the hill, perfectly trimmed hedges, and a last name everyone in town respected, the Mendezes. My father, Richard, was known for his charm, his business empire, and his obsession with legacy. My stepmother, Elaine, was the picture of elegance, soft-spoken in public, sharp as glass in private. And then there was Liam, my older brother, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I was the quiet one, the one who tried too hard. I believed that if I studied harder, smiled longer, and obeyed every rule, maybe they'd love me the same. Every Sunday dinner was a performance. Father at the head of the table, Elaine beside him, Liam cracking jokes that made everyone laugh. I'd sit there, smiling when expected, nodding at the right times. The chandeliers above sparkled brighter than I was ever allowed to. One night, I served dessert, my mother's old recipe, something I made hoping it might bring back a memory of her. My father took a bite, paused, and said, "It's too sweet. Your mother never knew how to balance things either." The table laughed. I didn't. I lowered my eyes, swallowing the sting as Elaine reached over to comfort me. "He doesn't mean it, dear," she said sweetly. "He's just reminding you not everyone is born with taste." That's when I understood. In this family, respect was reserved for bloodlines, and I was somehow on the outside of it. Still, I tried. I woke early to make his coffee the way he liked it, sent him reminders about his meetings, even ironed his shirts before business trips. He never thanked me. But when Liam did the bare minimum, he'd say, "That's my boy." The day before my 27th birthday, I overheard something small, but it stayed with me. Elaine was on the phone, her tone low and cutting. "She's not his anyway," she whispered, laughing softly. Richard just took responsibility to save face. I froze behind the door, my heart pounding so loud I thought she'd hear it. "Not his?" The words echoed like thunder. When I asked her about it later, she smiled that same icy smile and said, "Oh, Clara, you shouldn't take things out of context. Families have complicated histories." Then she changed the topic to party decorations. That night, I sat in my room staring at my reflection, trying to see what part of me didn't belong. My father's eyes? My mother's smile? Or something else entirely? The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under my door, unmarked, thin, almost deliberate. Inside was a faded photograph, my father, my mother, and a man I'd never seen before. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, it said only one thing. He promised to keep the truth. And that's when I realized, maybe my father wasn't protecting me at all. Maybe he was protecting himself. After that photograph, something inside me shifted. Every word, every glance from my father felt heavier, like it carried a second meaning I wasn't supposed to hear. The following week, he called a family meeting. Those words always made my stomach tighten. He sat at the long oak table, the same one where I'd learned my multiplication tables as a child, where he now dictated every decision about our lives. "Your brother will start handling the estate accounts," he announced, eyes gleaming with pride. "It's time Liam steps into responsibility." I waited. Maybe he'd mention me too, maybe some small acknowledgement for the years I'd spent working quietly in his office, organizing files, helping his clients, keeping his world together. But nothing. I finally asked, softly, "What about me, Dad?" He didn't look up. "You've done enough, Clara. Not everyone's meant to handle important matters. Liam smirked. Don't take it personally, sis. You're just better at the background stuff. Elaine chuckled, sipping her tea like she was watching a performance she'd already seen the ending of. I forced a smile, but my chest burned. Background stuff. That's what I was, background noise in a family obsessed with appearance. That night, I overheard them again, my father, Elaine, and Liam, their voices slipping through the half-open study door. She doesn't need to know about the will, Elaine murmured. I agree, Richard said flatly. It'll only complicate things. Liam added, she'll be fine. She's used to getting leftovers anyway. I felt the air leave my body. The will. They were talking about inheritance, the property my late mother had helped build, the one she said was for her children. For us. I stepped inside before I could stop myself. I heard everything. My voice shook, but I didn't care. Richard's eyes turned cold. You shouldn't eavesdrop, Clara. It's disrespectful. Disrespectful. I shot back. You're erasing my mother's legacy, and I'm the one being disrespectful. Elaine placed her hand on his arm like a puppet master steadying her strings. Clara, don't be dramatic. You should be grateful Richard raised you at all. Not many men would have done what he did. That line hit harder than any slap. What he did? I repeated, my throat tightening. What exactly did he do, Elaine? The silence was deafening. Liam stared at his shoes. My father finally stood, his voice low and final. Enough. You're embarrassing yourself. Something snapped inside me then. Years of silence, obedience, pretending not to notice how I was always one step behind. All of it erupted. You always taught us that respect means loyalty, I said, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. But you've never respected me. You've just tolerated me. He didn't respond. He just turned away, the conversation already over in his mind. That hurt more than any insult. Later that night, Grandma Rose called me into her room. Her hands trembled as she held mine. Clara, she whispered, your mother trusted Richard too much. Some secrets, they rot the soul. I asked her what she meant, but she just shook her head. If you want answers, find Victor Hale. He's the only one who knows the truth. Victor Hale, my father's oldest friend. The man from the photo. My heart pounded as realization dawned. Whatever my father was hiding, it wasn't just about inheritance or favoritism. It was about identity, my identity. And that night, as the storm outside cracked the sky open, I made a decision. If my family wanted to shut me out, I'd break every door down until I knew why. The weeks that followed were like living inside a storm that refused to break. Everyone in the house pretended things were normal, but the silence between my father and me grew heavier each day, sharp, suffocating. He barely spoke to me now. When he did, it was only in short, cutting remarks. Don't linger around the office, Clara, he'd say. Clients don't need confusion. Confusion. That's what I'd become, a mistake that somehow kept breathing under his roof. Elaine's whispers were worse. Every time relatives visited, she'd find a way to turn my existence into a cautionary tale. Poor Clara, she'd sigh, patting my shoulder. So emotional. She takes everything too personally. They'd nod, pity in their eyes, never realizing she was the one twisting the knife. One afternoon, during a family luncheon, I arrived late after helping Grandma Rose down the stairs. My chair, my usual seat, was gone. Liam had placed a vase there instead. Oh, Clara, he said with mock innocence, we thought you weren't coming. Didn't want to waste a spot. Everyone laughed. Even Father smiled faintly, sipping his wine like it was all harmless fun. I stood there, heat rushing to my face, fighting back tears. You could have asked, I said quietly. Elaine tilted her head. Don't make everything dramatic, dear. It's just a chair. But it wasn't. It was my place, the little piece of belonging I had left in that family. After lunch, I overheard Aunt Denise whispering to another guest. She doesn't look like any of them, does she? Poor thing. Must be difficult, living with people who aren't really her family. Her words sliced through me like glass. And when I looked at my father, standing just a few feet away, he said nothing. He let it happen. That night, I found myself replaying every memory, every time he'd told me to call him Dad, every time he'd said our family. Now, every word sounded fake, hollow, rehearsed. I tried confronting him again. Why do you let them humiliate me? I demanded. He didn't even glance up from his papers. Stop acting like a victim, Clara. Life isn't fair. Life isn't fair, I repeated, shaking. But parents are supposed to be. He slammed his pen down. Enough. You will not raise your voice in this house. You should be grateful I've given you everything. Everything except the truth, I said quietly. His eyes flickered, just for a moment, and that's when I knew. He was hiding something. Something that terrified him enough to turn his daughter into a stranger. Days later came Liam's engagement party, another grand event hosted to show off our perfect family. The ballroom shimmered with gold light, laughter, and champagne. I stood near the back, pretending to belong, when Elaine's voice cut through the noise. Oh, everyone, she called. Let's toast to our real heirs, Liam and the Mendez legacy. The word real echoed like thunder. Guests clapped. My father didn't stop her. He didn't even look at me. Maya, my cousin, whispered. Clara, you don't deserve this. But I just smiled bitterly. They've already decided what I deserve. As the night ended, I caught my father whispering urgently to someone near the bar, a tall man with silver hair. Victor Hale. The man from the photograph. When their eyes met mine across the room, Victor froze. He looked pale, afraid. And that's when I knew whatever secret bound my father and him together was about to unravel. And when it did, it would destroy everything. I didn't know a person could be destroyed so quietly. No screaming, no chaos, just a few sentences that rearranged the world forever. It happened 2 weeks after Liam's engagement party. Father called another family gathering, this time at his office, a formal setting, cold and sharp, with glass walls that reflected every uncomfortable truth. He sat behind his desk, flanked by Elaine and Liam, both of them looking almost triumphant. I sat across from them, my hands folded tightly in my lap. I already sensed something was wrong. The air felt too still. Clara, Father began, his tone unnervingly calm, there have been some changes regarding the estate. My throat went dry. What kind of changes? He didn't look at me when he said it. You've been removed from the will. The words hit like a physical blow. For a second, the world blurred. Removed. I whispered. Why? What did I do? Elaine spoke before he could. It's nothing personal, dear. It's just more appropriate that the family assets stay within the legitimate bloodline. Legitimate. The word sliced deep. Liam leaned back, smirking. It's for the best, Clara. Dad's just making sure there's no confusion later. Confusion. That was their favorite word for me now, as if I was some unwanted question in a perfectly rehearsed script. I looked at my father, searching his face for even a flicker of mercy. You're cutting me out? After everything. His expression didn't change. You'll be fine. I've set aside a small trust, enough for you to live comfortably. That was it. Years of loyalty, love, obedience, reduced to a transaction. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice trembling. Tell me the truth, Father. He finally looked at me, cold, distant, almost disgusted. Because you're not my daughter, Clara. And it's time you stopped pretending you are. The silence that followed was unbearable. My breath caught in my chest. I could hear Elaine's quiet satisfaction, Liam's awkward shuffle, the faint hum of the air conditioner. Not your daughter. I repeated, my voice cracking. Then who am I? But he didn't answer. He just turned away, as if I'd never existed. That's when I saw Victor Hale standing in the doorway, pale and tense. His eyes met mine for only a moment, full of guilt, sorrow, recognition. And in that instant, everything inside me collapsed. I stumbled out of the office, my vision blurring. I didn't know where I was going, just that I needed to breathe. Rain poured outside, soaking me as I stood in the parking lot, shaking. My chest ached so violently it felt like something inside had cracked open. I waited, for someone to follow me, to call my name, to say it was all a mistake. But no one did. That night, the house felt emptier than ever. Every corner echoed with the ghosts of conversations that suddenly meant nothing. The photos on the wall, me with my father at school events, birthdays, holidays, all looked fake now, like stills from a lie. I sat in my room, gripping that photograph of my parents and Victor Hale. My mother's smile suddenly looked sad. Almost like she knew this day would come. I thought of Grandma Rose's warning, some secrets rot the soul. Maybe this was what she meant. The next morning, I tried to speak to Father one last time. He was leaving for a business trip. I followed him to the door. "Dad," I said softly. "Please, I just want to understand." He turned to me, impatience flashing across his face. "You're not my problem anymore, Clara." And then he left. The sound of the door closing behind him was the loudest silence I'd ever heard. I didn't cry after that. I couldn't. Something colder replaced the pain, something focused. I looked around at the house that had raised me, the family that had broken me, and I realized something vital. They had taken my name, my inheritance, my place. But they hadn't taken the truth. And truth can destroy reputations far more than rumors ever could. As I stood there, drenched in the morning light, a strange calm filled me. If he wanted to erase me, I'd make sure the world remembered why. That was the moment everything changed. The betrayal stopped hurting, and started burning. Because from that day forward, I wasn't his daughter anymore. I was his reckoning. For the first time since he entered my name, I felt something else grow where the ache had been, a thin, hard wire of purpose. Grief had done its job, now anger sharpened into strategy. I stopped being the girl who waited for permission. I became someone who prepared to open every door he'd slammed in my face. I started small. I catalogued every slight, every phrase that had ever been used to make me a stranger in my own home. Emails, birthday cards, offhand remarks in meetings, I collected them like evidence, not memories. I photographed the will notice, copied the trust statement, and saved the screenshots of Elaine's messages where she mocked me. Every careless sentence became a brick in the structure I was building. Grandma Rose was my first ally. She slid me a tin box one evening, old receipts, a faded hospital bracelet, a note from my mother. "Your mother kept things she feared you might need," she said quietly. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady. "Use them." Then there was Victor Hale. Finding him felt like stepping into a storm. He was older, ragged with guilt, but when I asked the question that had burned through me for years, his answer came out like a confession. "I never wanted you to suffer," he whispered. "Richard begged me to stay silent. I thought I was protecting everyone." He handed me a letter he'd kept hidden, his handwriting raw with regret. It tied him to my mother and to a promise my father had demanded. I recorded him on my phone, his voice cracking as he confirmed details only he could know. Maya became my shadow and my shield. She taught me how to move quietly through legal corridors and public records. We spent nights at the county office, fingers numb from cold and adrenaline, pulling certified copies of birth records, property transfers, and corporate documents that showed how assets had been shifted in secret. "This will expose him," she whispered, eyes bright. "But it can also ruin everything. Are you sure?" I looked at the stack of papers and felt my resolve harden. If he ruined me to protect his image, then his image will be what's exposed. I hired a lawyer through a friend, someone who owed me a favor, to make sure the evidence would stand up publicly. We discussed defamation, inheritance laws, and the safest way to present the truth without being shut down by legal threats. The plan was not violent, it was surgical. I would not beg for my place. I would prove it. Then came the social stage, a family reunion, the same opulent hall where he had humiliated me. It was perfect, an audience of witnesses, a ring of relatives whose faces I knew like weathered maps. I arranged for Victor to be there, quietly seated in the back, ready to confirm the facts. I prepared a folder for every guest, certified documents, Victor's recorded statement, my mother's note, and a timeline of the lies. I had a friend at the local paper ready to receive copies the moment the room entered. I even set up a short, undeniable presentation on my laptop, photos, letters, and one clipped audio of my father promising to keep the truth. Every step felt risky. Elaine would try to discredit me. Liam would laugh and call it drama. Richard would threaten lawsuits and ruin. But the one thing he could not erase was proof. Truth, once collected and spoken, can expose a life built on performance. On the morning of the reunion, I dressed simply, no jewelry, no pleasantries. My hands didn't shake. I had rehearsed my lines until they felt like armor. Maya squeezed my hand as we walked in. Victor sat where I'd asked him to sit, eyes fixed on the stage. I stood behind the curtain, the hall humming with false cheer, and for the first time since that night at the dinner table, I tasted not fear, but a cold, steady certainty. Tonight, I would not be humiliated again. Tonight, I would give the family the one thing they'd been avoiding for years, the truth. The reunion hall glittered with chandeliers and false laughter. Crystal glasses clinked, old songs played, and the smell of expensive wine floated through the air. It was almost poetic, the same setting where my father had once denied me, now the stage where he would finally be unmasked. I stood near the edge of the crowd, waiting. My hands were steady, but my heartbeat felt like a war drum. From across the room, I saw him, Richard Mendez, immaculate as ever, greeting guests with that confident smile that had fooled everyone for decades. Elaine stood beside him, dazzling in her emerald dress, the perfect partner in deception. Liam hovered near the bar, laughing too loudly, already drunk on privilege. When the chatter quieted for speeches, my father took the microphone. Family, he began, his voice smooth as ever, is about legacy, about protecting the name that generations before us built. I stepped forward. Then maybe it's time we protect the truth instead. The crowd turned. Whispers began. My father froze mid-sentence, his smile faltering. Clara, he said carefully, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time, I said. You taught me that reputation matters more than anything. So let's talk about yours. Elaine's face went pale. Liam frowned. The room tensed. I moved to the front. Taking the MIC 2 months ago, my father told everyone I wasn't his daughter. Tonight, he'll tell you why. He shook his head sharply. Clara, stop this nonsense. I held up the folder, the one with every document, every proof. This isn't nonsense. This is truth. The first slide on the screen behind me appeared, a photo of my mother, smiling, holding me as a baby. Then another, my father beside her, and in the corner, a familiar face, Victor Hale. Gasps echoed around the hall. This man, I said, pointing to Victor seated near the back, was my mother's closest friend, and the man who loved her long before my father did. My mother never hid that from him. But what she didn't know was that her husband would bury the truth, and raise me not out of love, but out of guilt. My father's face drained of color. Enough, he snapped. This is a lie. Then tell them, I said, stepping closer. Tell them I'm lying. Tell them why my birth certificate doesn't have your name. Tell them why Grandma Rose begged you to stop lying before she died. The crowd turned toward him. Elaine looked ready to faint. Liam muttered, Dad, what's going on? I hit play on the audio clip. Victor's voice filled the hall. Richard, you can't keep this secret forever. She deserves to know who she is. Then my father's own voice, recorded from years ago. No one will ever find out. I'll make sure of it. The silence that followed was unbearable, heavy, alive. My father's mask cracked. I did it to protect this family, he said, desperate now. I did it for you all. No, I said, tears burning but voice steady. You did it to protect your pride. You destroyed me to protect your name. Elaine stood up suddenly, her voice trembling. Richard, you said it was taken care of, you said. He shot her a glare that silenced her instantly. The audience murmured, scandal spreading like fire. Victor stepped forward, his face etched with sorrow. She's telling the truth. Clara is my daughter. I stayed silent because he made me believe it was for her safety. But it was never about her. It was always about him. My father staggered back, gripping the table for balance. Every eye in the room was on him, judgment, disbelief, betrayal. For the first time, the man who controlled every narrative couldn't speak. I turned to the crowd, voice calm but filled with years of pain. All I ever wanted was to be accepted, to belong. But respect without truth is just theater. Tonight, the show is over. Then I looked at him one last time. You said I wasn't your daughter, Father. And you were right, not anymore. The room erupted, relatives shouting, reporters flashing cameras, Elaine crying into her hands. I walked out slowly, the cool night air hitting my face like freedom. Behind me, I heard him call my name once, but I didn't turn back. For the first time in my life, the silence belonged to me, and in that silence, I felt it, justice. Cold, clean, complete. The days that followed the reunion felt eerily quiet, as if the world itself needed time to absorb the truth. 4 years, our family name had been built on control, on rehearsed smiles and carefully buried secrets. Now, that illusion had shattered, and the silence left behind was deafening. I heard later that Elaine had left the house the next morning, humiliated, her reputation reduced to whispers and pity. Liam tried to defend my father online, but the damage was done. Videos of the confrontation spread like wildfire. People saw not the man he pretended to be, but the one he really was, a father who'd traded love for pride. Victor reached out once, gently, almost apologetically. He said he wanted to start over, to make up for lost years. I told him I needed time, not because I hated him, but because I'd spent so long searching for truth that I no longer knew what to do with it once it was mine. He nodded in understanding. "Take your time," he said softly. "For the first time, it's yours to take." I moved out of that house, the one that had raised me, rejected me, and finally set me free. The walls no longer felt like home. They felt like a museum of lies. Grandma Rose's old locket was the only thing I kept. Inside it, a faded picture of my mother, smiling, a reminder that love and truth were never meant to be enemies. Sometimes I walk past the Mendez estate just to see it from a distance. It looks smaller now. Maybe it always was, and I was just too afraid to see it. What surprised me most was how peace doesn't arrive with noise or applause, it comes quietly. It settles into your bones when you stop needing to prove yourself to people who were never willing to see you. A week later, I met my father by chance at a cafe downtown. He looked older, diminished somehow. He tried to meet my eyes, but couldn't. "Clara," he whispered, "I never meant to hurt you." I studied him, the man who once defined my worth. Then I said the only truth that still mattered. "You didn't just hurt me, father. You taught me what it costs to lose yourself for pride." He had no answer. Only silence. I walked away without anger, only clarity. Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about refusing to carry someone else's shame. In the end, the truth didn't ruin me. It rebuilt me. The girl who once begged for acceptance had become a woman who needed none. When people ask me now what family means, I tell them this: family isn't defined by blood, or names, or wills. It's defined by the people who protect your dignity when no one else will. And respect, real respect, isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn, even if it means standing alone. That night, I didn't just expose a secret, I buried the silence that once defined me. And from its ashes, I rose with my name, my truth, and my peace intact.